In this video, we're going to be taking a deep dive into every single fight taking place at UFC Fight Night London from a betting point of view, and the added bonus of me releasing these videos later than usual is we now have a full range of odds available for every single fight on this card. So usually when I record these breakdown videos earlier in the week, we don't have the fight spread odds and the over-unders released here in Europe for a lot of the prelim fights, but now, as you can see, we've got a full range of odds. So as we work through breaking down each of the matchups on this card, the added bonus of this video coming out late is that I'm hopefully going to be able to find you some great value fight spread bets and over-unders to go with the moneyline bets to hopefully help you earn a bit of extra cash on this card. And if you want to give yourself the best chance of earning cash on this card, come join my live betting group. You can actually join for this weekend's event for just $35, running a promotion on Saturday. And this will give you an opportunity to come and see what I do, learn how to live bet the sport from myself. I consider myself the best in the world at this. Been doing it a very long time. It is my bread and butter. It's my speciality. It's the skill that I do better than anything else in the world. We make a profit pretty much every weekend. You can see our profit chart over the last 10 years dating back to 2016 has been absolutely phenomenal. We've made a profit on around 67% of events, on 72% of months, which is ridiculously impressive if I do say so myself. You gotta be positive, you gotta big yourself up, you gotta give you a pat on the back, give yourself a pat on the back when you achieve great things. And I think there are very few people in the world who could probably claim to have made a profit betting on sports in 72% of months. My community, many of the guys in there have been with me for years, so if you're wondering how I've been able to continue putting these videos out on YouTube for 7 or 8 years now with a really small audience, why I keep talking about live betting on the UFC being such a great opportunity, and why I keep telling you guys you're missing out big time for not being a part of the team, being in my group. Now's your opportunity to just come try it out, see if you like it. There's all kinds of information on my website as to how it works, but obviously you can read as much information as you want until you see it in action. It's not going to make 100% sense to you, because to be honest with you, what we do is quite unique and there's not much else like what we do in the world. So don't worry about being behind, delayed on a stream. Don't worry about how to live bet. Don't worry about anything. Just come see how it works, and all the problems you think you have that would stop you from making money almost every month of the year betting this sport, I've kind of figured out over a very long period of time. And not only can I help you overcome most of the challenges you're going to run into, but the system that I've built is designed for enabling you to place live bets on this sport ahead of 99.9% of people also live betting this sport. So I've got the fastest system in the world that I know of. If you read, I'm not going to tell you how I've achieved this, but I've built a custom system where in less than 1 second anywhere in the world you can be notified of a live betting opportunity from myself. And on top of that, I don't want to go into too much about how I do things, because obviously if people knew exactly how I do things, my edge would be destroyed. I don't want the betting sites finding out what we do. But if you are, not dabbling in live betting because maybe you're watching on Paramount or TNT Sports or another streaming platform which is 30 seconds to a minute behind the live action, you're thinking, I can't live bet on the sport because I don't know what the hell's going on in the future. That's a very, very valid concern. You don't have to worry about that, because my system completely solves that problem for you in a spoiler-free way. So whereas you may have heard of other live betting groups or provide commentary to you so that you know what's going on in the future when you're watching on a delayed stream, I do that as well. But if you don't want spoilers, you want to enjoy the fights, make a little bit of money at the same time, you can mute my commentary. You don't have to listen to me, and you can receive audio notifications instead, letting you know when there's a good betting opportunity. So you can be watching the fights, have your phone in front of you, and you'll get a notification less than 1 second anywhere in the world based on a real-time broadcast that the bookies are seeing, and you could place your bets ahead of 99.9% of people that bet on this sport, which gives you a huge edge. Because if you think about it, getting in early before the market moves, there's a momentum swing in a fight, you can get in and place a bet on it before the rest of the world has even seen it. So you've got your position at favourable odds before the masses rush in and crash the odds or cause them to suspend. There's only 30 spaces available for this weekend, so once they're sold out, they're sold out. But give it a try. I'm sorry these breakdown videos have been coming out later than usual the last 2 weeks. For those of you that like football in Europe, you'll know that it's a very busy time for us that bet on the sport of football. It's extremely busy at the moment. We've got Champions League, CONCACAF Champions Cup. We have got, English games midweek. There's a lot to bet at the moment, so the football betting schedule is absolutely crazy. And as many of you will know, I've been talking about over the last few years, I started betting on football back in early 2022 to try and crack the sport of football so that I can kind of diversify my income streams so that I'm not solely reliant on the UFC. Because obviously if anything would have happened to the UFC, I'd be completely screwed. So I've tried to use my skills to crack another sport, and because I grew up watching football, I turned my attention to football. As you can see, I am profitable since I started back in early 2022, which is pretty impressive considering football's generally considered the most difficult sport in the world to crack. It's the highest liquidity sport in the world because it's the most popular global sport. As you can see, I am profitable. I'm not as profitable as I want to be, but considering right out the gate, very, very early on in my career, I became profitable. I think what I've achieved so far is, pretty huge achievement, to be fair. Again, you got to celebrate your own success, give yourself a pat on the back, especially when you work very hard. And so, the next 2 months football are going to be crazy. And what I will do, if you do sign up and take advantage of this promotion, join the live betting group this weekend, I'll also be giving you access to all my football bets for this weekend. And we're likely to place 10, 15, 20 bets on football this weekend before and after the UFC. We've been on a pretty good run this week, actually. If we scroll all the way down to the bottom here, over the last sort of 25 bets, we've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 winners. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 losers. 12 wins, 7 losses. A couple nice underdog bets in there as well. 1.50, 1.60. A few pushes as well. A few refunds. And yeah, if you don't understand football and you don't understand what Asian handicaps are, don't worry. They are a little confusing because basically they're kind of like spread bets, handicaps for football, point spreads, point handicaps for football, but every single betting site in the world seems to call them something different, so don't panic. If you're from the United States, or even if you're from Europe, and you think, oh, I'd love to join this promotion, try live betting out on the UFC, also bet football with Chris on Saturday and Sunday, but I don't really understand these Asian handicaps, don't worry, because once you gain access to everything, or once you basically join the promotion, you'll gain access to all areas of the chat room. So I'll be online all weekend. If you get stuck with anything, if you're not sure of anything, I'll be about to help you, talk you through it. Or if you've got any questions before joining, you could just go to the chat room, and a few of the rooms are available to everyone or open to everyone, like the general chat. You can jump in there. It's open to everyone. So come and join the team. That's pretty much all that stuff out the way. If you've been wanting to try live betting for a while, this is your chance. 30 spaces available for Saturday. Get on it. It'll be a fun day of betting. The reason why I don't do promotions very often is because first impressions are everything. And what I tend to find is when people join my live betting group, if we have a good, first 2 or 3 events after they join, they tend to stay with me for years because they feel the power instantly of what we're capable of doing. But if they join and then we have a bad 2 or 3 events, it doesn't happen very often. We had a flat period here, flat period here, flat period here. Had a dip last couple of weeks. then first impressions are everything. If they have a bad first few events, then they think I'm trash and they leave and they form an opinion on what I do forever. Reason why I've picked this particular event to do a promotion is because I do think it'll be a very good event for live betting. Mainly because home advantage is kind of like a strategy you can lean into to make money live betting on this sport. We've also got 14 fights, so you know most cards you have like 12 fights. There's a couple more fights, a little bit more volume than usual. It's a daytime event, so it's tending, you know, it's in a pretty friendly time zone for the United States and those of us in Europe. And it's got a lot of fights on it, which should be very good for live betting. We tend to perform really well on these low-key fight night cards. That's why I don't run these promotions too often, because what I don't want to do is run a promotion, then we do really bad like we have on the last two events, and then you guys form an opinion that I suck and you never give it a try ever again. Obviously, I can't make an event a profit every event. You're going to have bad weeks. It's inevitable in sports betting. There's nothing you can do about it. But I've picked this event to run this promo because those of you that have been interested for a while, I have a sneaky feeling we're going to do pretty good on this card. You never know. We might get destroyed. We've got really unlucky the last 2 weeks. We've lost we're 0-4 on split decisions. So a bit unlucky. And I'm kind of hoping we get a little bit swing back in our favour this weekend, and hopefully you can join me for that. I would love to see you in the group. Any questions about how anything works, slide by the chat room. I'm always online. I'll be online all weekend. Love to see you in there. So we'll start off by breaking down. Do you know what? Shall we start with the main event? Or shall we start with the prelims? I think we'll work our way up to the main event. I think we'll start off all the way down the bottom. We won't start with Melissa Mullins versus Luana Carolina because I did say I'd be breaking down every fight on this card, but the irony is I haven't actually researched this fight yet. This is the only fight on the card I haven't had time to research yet, so we'll leave that one. We'll start with Chanel Dyier versus Ravinia Olivivera. So if we start off by taking a look at the odds, we can see Dyer's a 1.21 favourite, which is going to be minus 483 for an implied probability of 83%. Ravina Olivivera, she is a 4.60 underdog, which is plus 360 for an implied probability of 22%. Now, if we look at the fighter comparison tool, we don't have too much information on Dyier because it's her UFC debut, but we can see in terms of like age and size, there's nothing too major going on there. Now, in terms of how these two match up from a stylistic point of view, they're both primarily strikers. Neither of them tried to take their opponents down very often. If we take a look at Dyer's record, you can see from her record, all her wins are by decision and striking knockouts for the most part. So there's an omoplata win here. Oh, that's actually a grappling match in Polaris. So yeah, Dyier very much a striker. If we bring up Olivivera's record, you can see for the most part, same thing. Couple of one submission there, but outside of that, for the most part, knockouts, TKOs, decisions. So both these girls are strikers. This should be a stand-up fight. Olivivera is particularly bad on the ground, so even though we haven't seen a whole lot of Dyer's ground game, if this fight did go to the ground, it's hard to see Olivivera having too much success against anyone. She's particularly bad on the ground, but I don't think that'll matter. I think this will be a stand-up fight. If it stays standing, both girls are reasonably technical. There's no doubt that Dyier is the better striker out of the two. I would say this is one of those fights where the odds do feel a bit aggressive, to be fair. They do feel very wide. To have Dyier as an implied probability of 83% in her UFC debut is super aggressive. I don't think the skill gap is huge between these two. There's no doubt that Dyier is the better striker, but I don't think the skill gap is huge. And so the odds do feel a bit wide. Having said that, Dyier will have home advantage on her side. It's not going to be easy for a non-Brazilian or non-British fighter to beat a British fighter this weekend. Home advantage is huge in the UK, and therefore Dyier, it's going to be very difficult for Olivivera to win this. So Dyier should get the job done. Don't want to really drag this one out. Pretty straightforward fight. If we take a look at the over-under and the fight spreads, obviously the fight's very likely to go to a decision. Both girls are reasonably skilled strikers. There's not a massive skill gap for Dyier on the feet. Very likely to go over, but the odds reflect that. and I don't really like either of the fight spreads because it is possible that Dyier outclasses Olivivera for 3 rounds and wins a 30-27 decision. So I don't like the plus point spread there on Olivivera, but at the same time, I don't see the skill gap as being massive, so it is possible that Olivivera could nick a round, in which case the plus 3.5 would cash. The fight's a bit dead from a betting point of view, so I think we'll move on to Shamrock versus Abdul Karim Al-Salwadi. So this is a very, very interesting fight. We can see both guys are in the even money odds range, and if you shop around, you can bet both of them at pretty much the same odds. We've got 1.96 minus 185 here, which is minus 104, minus 118. What have Bet365 got? Yeah, a little bit different. Shamrock, the slight underdog. Okay, interesting. So, in terms of how these two match up stylistically, this is a really, really, really interesting fight because Shamrock's not very good, and based on past performances, Al-Salwadi is better than him everywhere, in my opinion, which is, I think, why we've seen the odds decline on Al-Salwadi. When I researched this fight earlier in the week, he was the slight underdog. Now he's the slight favourite. Shamrock is one of these guys that doesn't really have any power in his hands. Striking's a little bit sloppy. He's not a particularly strong or physically imposing grappler either. He's a bit of a jack of all trades, master of none. And Al-Salwadi, he's tough, he's well-rounded, he fights at a high pace for 3 rounds, doesn't have any major weaknesses, he's not brilliant at anything, but he's just tough and scrappy. With a fight like this, if this fight were taking place on neutral territory, somewhere in the United States, in the Apex, I would bet Al-Salwadi in this fight, because from my perspective, he's better than Shamrock everywhere. In the even money odds range, with him having an advantage everywhere, it'd be an absolute no-brainer to bet him. The two issues that I have with Al-Salwadi, the first issue is that he's been quite inactive. Okay, so his record's not loading for us because the special characters in his name are confusing my system. But he hasn't fought very much. He's fought like once in the last 2 years or something. He's coming in this fight on a bit of a long layoff. And also, Shamrock has got home advantage on his side. We know it's not easy for, foreign fighters to come in and beat British fighters on cards in the UK. Shamrock will have the crowd behind him. But Al-Salwadi is a very tempting bet because I do think he is better than Shamrock everywhere. So if we look at the other odds on this fight, see if we can dig up anything interesting. So again, don't like either of these point spreads. I think the fight is more likely to go over 2.5 rounds, but I don't love the odds. I think this fight is a bit dead from a betting point of view. Yeah, there's nothing that I really love there, to be honest. I think let's move on to the next one. So Louis Sutherland versus Brando Perisic. Not the most interesting fight, to be fair. There are some blind spots in terms of, trying to predict how this one will go, because if we look at Perisic's record, we don't really know a whole lot about him. You can see that he's only had 6 pro fights, and every single one of those fights has ended very, very quickly. We haven't really seen him go past round 2. This fight ended quite early in round 2, and with him being a heavyweight, obviously a lot of heavyweights have got cardio issues. They do slow down a lot as fights wear on, and so if this fight is contested at a high pace, both guys exert a lot of energy, and this fight goes into the 2nd or 3rd round, we don't know how Perisic is going to look because we haven't seen him in those stages of a fight before. With Sutherland, whilst based on what we've seen from both guys, there's no doubt that Perisic is the better striker, we know more about Sutherland, and so even though he's very limited, even though he's not that athletic, He's not that powerful for a heavyweight. He's quite sloppy on the feet. He's quite slow. Sometimes better the devil you know, and at least we know Sutherland, can grapple, even though he was submitted, obviously, in his last fight. I've seen him use a bit of wrestling in some of his past performances. We know Sutherland can perform at a decent level for 3 rounds, and his cardio holds up reasonably well for a heavyweight, whereas Perisic, much more of an unknown. Based on what we've seen, Sutherland is a slow, sloppy, flat-footed striker, a bit stuck in the mud, typical low-level heavyweight. Perisic is fast, he's explosive, he's more of a dynamic striker. So early in the fight, this will be difficult for Sutherland. We don't know anything about Perisic's takedown offense and ground game. Sutherland has been known to shoot takedowns and try to get fights to the ground. But for the most part, he prefers to stand and strike. So this is one of those matchups where I understand why Perisic is the favourite. Based on past performances, he's nasty on the feet, should be able to give Sutherland problems early in the matchup. However, without knowing how Perisic looks deeper into the fight, I think it's very, very dangerous to bet him at big favourite odds, 1.37 minus 271, which carry an implied probability of 73%. So the money line's an easy pass for me, because I wouldn't take Perisic with the unanswered questions over him, but I wouldn't bet Sutherland either, because he's probably going to be in a lot of trouble early. He's not great, and if Perisic does have reasonably good takedown defence and decent enough cardio to fight for 3 rounds, he's probably going to smoke Sutherland. So if we take a look at the other odds, so again, I'm not interested in the fight spreads on this, and I'm not interested in the over-under either, because Perisic did come out the gate very hard in his UFC debut, and Sutherland is a bit of a sitting duck on the feet. So I wouldn't go with the over 1.5 rounds, but I wouldn't take the under either, just because, we don't know a lot about Perisic. And so, yeah, not a great deal in my opinion. Now let's move on to this fight between Mantas Condrais versus Antonio Trocoli. Now, for these first few breakdowns we've done, haven't really been able to go into anything too deep or meaningful for you, because there's a lot of unanswered questions about how a lot of these fights are going to play out. That's definitely the case with Mantas, because similar to Perisic, we just don't know very much about him. If you take a look at his record, he's had 9 pro fights, and if you take a look through each of these fights over the last few years, you can see again the vast majority of them ended very, very, very quickly. The last time he went to a decision was 7 years ago, almost 7 years ago, back in 2019. He lost the decision, but obviously he could have improved a hell of a lot since then. So just like Brando Perisic, there's a lot that we don't know about Mantas. He moves well. He's very explosive on the feet. Mantas looks good, but obviously a lot of guys look good until they're tested and face a step up in competition, and then they don't look quite as impressive. So obviously Trocoli's quite a low level guy. He's slow, he's stiff, he's flat footed, he's bad defensively on the feet. Obviously his strength is his grappling. We don't really know anything about Mantas' grappling due to a lack of footage. I understand why Mantas is the favourite. Trocoli's pretty low level, slow, bit of a sitting duck on the feet, not a particularly effective MMA grappler. He's very stiff with his takedown entries, but I don't know how a guy, is a 1.13 minus 769 favourite with an implied probability of 89%, when we really don't know anything about him, and he's barely been past the first round in the last sort of 5, 6, 7 years. So if you want to bet this fight, obviously it's dog or pass. You'd be crazy to bet an unknown like Mantas, but yeah, it's another one of those fights where we just don't have a whole lot of information. In terms of the other things we could look to bet, I don't like the fight spreads because we don't know anything about Mantas. I don't love either of these over-unders either. So a bit of a dead fight for betting. I think we should move on to another maybe slightly more interesting but also potentially dead fight for betting. It's Felipe Franco versus Mario Pinto. We're getting some aggressive odds on these fights. Some massive favourites on some fights, which could be pretty explosive. So Mario Pinto is a 1.10 favourite, which is going to be minus 957 for an implied probability of 91%. Franco 7.09 underdog, which is plus 609 for an implied probability of 14%. So both these guys do share quite a lot of characteristics. They're both similar in many ways. They are primarily strikers, but they will go to their grappling, and they both do have issues on the ground. I know Pinto looked amazing on the ground against Jonathan Deniz, dominated him, but I think that said a lot more about Deniz's limitations than perhaps Mario Pinto's strengths as a grappler. And so this is one of those matchups where there's no doubt that Pinto is better than Franco everywhere. Franco is pretty low level. Messing with my hair, sorry. Yeah, Franco is pretty low level. Looked horrendous on the ground in his fight on the Contender Series. So if he ends up underneath Pinto with how nasty Pinto was from top position against Deniz, Franco's probably going to be in a lot of trouble. Franco's not as powerful, as fast or explosive or as technical as Pinto on the feet either. I think this, for me, is kind of similar to the Chanel Dyier versus Ravina Olivivera fight, where I understand why Pinto's the favourite, I understand why Dyer's the favourite. This is another one of those fights where, particularly in the heavyweight division, where these are very big guys that all carry power, this is another one of those fights where the odds feel very wide to me, because, you know, there's no doubt that Pinto is better than Franco everywhere, but to cap Pinto as a 91% favourite is kind of absurd. Because he's better than Franco everywhere, Franco's not the kind of guy I would look to bet here. But if you did want to sprinkle money on this fight to make watching him more interesting, you know, you've got to go dog or pass. I would not be betting Pinto at, 1.10 minus 957 in a heavyweight fight where it only takes one shot to get knocked out. These odds are absolutely crazy. If we take a look at the other odds on this fight, so not interested in the fight spreads, not interested in the over-unders either. Pinto's dangerous on the feet, big knockout power, nasty on the ground. I think we should move on to the next fight on this card. Finally, things are getting a little bit interesting. We've had a lot of dead fights in these breakdowns so far, but we're now getting onto a good one, which is Nathaniel Wood versus Losene Keita. So if we start off by taking a look at the odds, we can see Keita is a 1.41 favourite, which is going to be minus 243 for an implied probability of 71%. And if we take a look at the odds on Wood, he is a 2.91 underdog, which is plus 191 for an implied probability of 34%. And I find it very interesting how Wood is an underdog in this matchup, because we know he's going to have the crowd behind him big time. He's one of the most popular fighters over here in the UK, an extremely likeable person, a very, very good person. I've met Nathaniel. He's a great guy. And the thing that I love about Nathaniel, he is a professional gambler's dream, because he is ruthlessly consistent. Consistency is a superpower in this sport, and so few fighters have consistency. But when you place a bet on Nathaniel Wood, and when he shows up on fight night, you know 100% of the time he is always going to show up and perform to his full potential, which is quite remarkable and a testament to his toughness, his resilience, and his work ethic, when we know fighters train harder than any other athletes in the world, and they're always coming in injured, sick, depleted from weight cuts, yet somehow, win or lose, Nathaniel Wood always finds a way to perform close to his full potential. And if he's off, if he's injured, if he's sick, if he's not feeling great, if he's hurt, you'd never know it. So, very interesting to find Wood the underdog in this matchup, because a lot of guys throughout their careers, when they've come up against Wood, whilst in some respects they may have advantages in different areas, be more technical in different areas, you cannot quantify toughness, durability, resilience, work rate, output. These are things that Wood has got in abundance. And so Keita's coming into this fight. It's his UFC debut. he's a lot less experienced than Wood. Yes, he's had 17 pro fights, but nowhere near the level of Wood or nowhere near the level of guy he's going to face in the UFC. He's in the big leagues now. And it is one hell of a tough debut, to be honest with you. In some respects, when I research this fight, I can understand why Keita is the favourite. Because when you look at his past performances, he's a very technical striker. He does move well on the feet. He's fast. He's explosive. He's accurate. And Wood is one of these industrious, hard-working, blue-collar fighters that may not have the most power in his hands, may not be the best defensively, but his toughness, his work rate, his durability are his biggest strengths. And those strengths are powerful attributes to have in mixed martial arts. And whilst Keita has looked very good against this lower level of opponent, his cardio's held up and all that kind of stuff, at the same time, these guys that he's been facing haven't really pushed him very hard or tested him. Wood's one of these guys that will walk him down, stay in his face, force him to fight at a very high pace. Wood will have the crowd behind him, and, you know, Wood was able to find a way to make Delgado's life very difficult in his last fight. I personally feel Delgado is a lot better than Keita. And so, whilst I understand Keita, why he's the favourite, he's more of a technical striker, he's more flashy, more explosive. This is another one of those matchups where the odds do feel wide. Especially when you consider Nathaniel Wood's got home advantage on his side, and if any of these rounds turn out to be reasonably close, you think the British judges would be more likely to give Nathaniel the nod. We know home advantage is a big factor in the UFC. In any sport, home advantage is a big deal in officiating. So this is one of those matchups where, if we break down how they match up standing up and on the ground, we don't know a whole lot about Keita's takedown offense and ground game, but I don't think it'll matter a whole lot because Wood never really tries to take his opponents down. We know Wood's takedown offense isn't great. He's not the best off his back, but Keita is a pure striker, so I doubt that's going to matter. And like I say, in terms of how they match up on the feet, Keita is a fast, explosive, dynamic, powerful striker, very flashy. Wood industrious, pressure fighter, high volume, likes to come forward, be the aggressor, look to outwork you, look to wear you down. And I think this fight is going to come down to whether or not Keita can handle the intensity and the pace that Wood is going to make him fight at. Because Wood will be looking to drag him through hell. And while Keita has looked good against these low level of opponents, nothing's going to prepare you for facing someone like Nathaniel Wood in your UFC debut. So, for me, this is one of those fights where, out of all the underdogs on the card, I think Wood is the one that is front of the line to cause an upset in the betting odds. Not necessarily an upset because of how experienced, how skilled Nathaniel Wood is, and the fact that he shouldn't be facing guys like Losene, Keita. He should be facing much bigger names, in my opinion. But he's an absolute warrior. And, won't turn down a fight. Anytime, any place, anywhere. He's that kind of guy. Absolute legend. And so, yeah, it's one of those fights where very good for live betting. Bit tricky for pre-fight betting. But if you were to bet your money on either of these guys, you've got to take dog or pass Wood. At an implied probability of 71%, it would be absurd to bet Keita, or the value lies with Wood here. Now, in terms of the over-unders and fight spreads, I am interested in the fight spread on Wood. And what I would say is, if you do want to bet this fight, I wouldn't bet Wood as an underdog money line. I would take slightly worse odds and take the plus 3.5 point spread, fight spread even. The reason why I prefer the fight spread to the money line bet is because one of the main issues with Wood is that he won't take a backward step. He won't back down from exchanges. And so he does get rocked, wobbled, and dropped a lot because he engages a lot and he wants to stay on the front foot and be the aggressor. And obviously when you're hunting your opponent down, being the aggressor, you do leave yourself open to counters. And when you're, initiating the exchanges, looking to take your opponent out, you also put yourself in a position to be finished. Keita is fast, he is powerful, he is explosive, he could catch Wood with a shot and knock him out. So from my perspective, obviously if Wood gets knocked out, you lose the money line bet, you lose the fight spread bet. You lose both bets, right? But it's possible that Keita could perform really good in the first 2 rounds, kind of, use his speed and technique to outstrike Wood in the first 2 rounds. And then if Wood's pressure finally starts to get to him in the second half of the fight, like it did Delgado, and we start to see Keita slow, and Wood starts to put volume on him, you could see a situation where Wood nicks the 3rd round, Keita's won the first 2 rounds, and even though Keita wins a 29-28 decision, your fight spread bet at 3.5 would still cash on Nathaniel Wood. So even though I'm recording this video on Friday, I haven't made my mind up if I'm going to be betting this fight yet. But if I do bet it, I will take the fight spread plus 3.5. I would not take the money line. I think the fight spread is a little bit of insurance for you, where yes, you have to take worse odds, but if it turns out to be really close, really competitive, and Wood just loses a very close decision, I think this plus 3.5 fight spread is your insurance to hopefully still make you a little bit of cash on this fight. So very interesting matchup. Let me know what you think about it in the chat room or in the comments below if you're watching on YouTube. It's a brilliant fight. I've met Nathaniel. He's an incredible person, a really just genuinely nice and good person, and I really hope that he gets the win on Saturday night, because with everything he's done for the UFC and his position in the sport and all the sacrifices he's made, all the damage he's taken, all the brilliant fights, the entertaining fights he's put on over the years, Dana talks a big game about how much he wants fighters to, go after the finish and be entertaining and, put on exciting fights for us fans. And there are not many guys in the UFC I can think of that consistently show up and deliver incredible fights. There ain't many more guys than Nathaniel Wood I can think of that every single time they fight, it's one of the best fights on the card. Nathaniel Wood is guaranteed entertainment, guaranteed action, and he makes a lot of sacrifices to deliver those kind of fights because he always takes a lot of damage and puts himself through hell. So he shouldn't be fighting guys like Losene, Keita. He should be headlining fight night cards. He should be, shown more respect by the promotion, in my opinion. But he's a nice guy, absolute warrior, and, probably too nice to fucking tell him straight, because what can you do, man? The UFC bully their fighters and they underpay them, and pisses me off as a fan. So I really hope he wins this weekend, because he shouldn't be fighting guys like Keita. He should be fucking operating at a much higher level. So yeah, rant over. Nathaniel Wood's a legend. We now are going to break down the next fight, which is going to be Mason Jones versus Axel Sola. And at the moment, at the time of recording this video, Mason Jones is the only moneyline bet that I have got on this card. And maybe I'll add more bets to it, but I do like Mason Jones in this fight. And we've just broken down Nathaniel Wood versus Losene Keita, and in many ways, Mason Jones is very similar to Nathaniel Wood. I love fighters like Mason Jones and Nathaniel Wood, because like I've said when talking about Nathaniel Wood, in a sport which seriously lacks consistency, Mason Jones is ruthlessly consistent. And so for all of his weaknesses, and there are many, at least when you bet on Mason Jones, 9 times out of 10, he's going to show up as advertised and deliver the exact kind of performance you expect. Which means when you bet on Mason Jones's fights or Nathaniel Wood's fights, they are great for betting, because you don't generally get too many surprises from their fights. They tend to go out pretty much how you think they will. And whilst that doesn't always make them bettable from a betting perspective, because the odds might be accurate, and it doesn't necessarily mean your guy's always going to win or you're always going to get it right, because, you know, one punch in the face can change everything. Mason Jones is ruthlessly consistent, and that's one of the reasons why we are going to be betting him on this card this weekend, and hopefully he comes through for us in the even money odds range. I do think this is a good stylistic matchup for him, but of course, like with any bet, it is not without a decent amount of risk. So why do we like Mason Jones in this fight? Well, first of all, I like his odds. He's a 1.77 favourite, which is minus 130 for an implied probability of 57%, compared to Axel Sola, who's a 2.06 underdog, which is plus 106 for an implied probability of 48.5%. So both of them in the even money odds range. One of the reasons why I like Mason Jones, like I've said, is he's very consistent. You know exactly what you're getting from him. Another reason why I like Mason Jones is that he should have home advantage on his side. Yes, he's Welsh. Yes, this event is taking place in London. But the crowd should be behind Mason Jones. There's probably going to be a lot of Welsh fans in the arena on Saturday night. And he's a popular fighter with a very exciting style. So if any of these rounds tend to be reasonably close, similar to the other British fighters on this card, you think Mason Jones would get the nod against Sola, the foreign fighter. Now, in terms of how they match up from a stylistic point of view, Jones, very similar to Nathaniel Wood, doesn't like to take a backward step. He is non-stop action. He is the aggressor. He will not stop coming forward for 15 minutes, and this guy is capable of sprinting. He throws a high volume of strikes. He's aggressive with his grappling. His pace is absolutely relentless. Similar to Nathaniel Wood, Mason Jones' biggest weakness is his recklessness, because he doesn't like to take a backward step. He does get dinged a lot. He does get rocked, wobbled, and dropped a lot. And Sola is a dangerous striker who likes to fight on the outside, be very technical, and Jones will be very prone to Sola's counter-striking, because Sola will be looking to play the role of Matador and circle on the outside and chip away at Jones, and Jones will be walking onto those counter shots in an effort to drag Sola into big exchanges and wear him down with his constant pressure. So there's no doubt that Sola is the more technical out of the two, but you say that about pretty much anyone that Mason Jones fights. Anyone that Jones fights, for the most part, is going to be more technical than him. Yet he's got a fantastic record of 17-2, because just like Nathaniel Wood, some of the best attributes a fighter can have in mixed martial arts is consistency, toughness, cardio, high output, and a strong will to win. And just like Nathaniel Wood, Mason Jones has all those attributes in an absolute abundance. So from my perspective, I think similar to the Wood versus Keita fight, I think early on Sola's likely to do very well in this matchup. I think being the more technical striker, he'll be able to stay light on his feet and pick Jones off from the outside. But Sola does get flatter as fights wear on, and Jones is one of these guys that the longer the fight goes, the more he pours it on. So whereas most fighters start strong and then fade as they get tired, Jones just keeps getting better and better and better, higher and higher output, pouring it on more and more as the fight goes. So I think early on Sola will do well, but I think Jones will finish strong and backdoor a decision, maybe even get a late stoppage. I just don't see Sola being able to keep up with the pace that Jones sets. So from a technical point of view, I think Sola is probably better than Jones everywhere. Jones can give up the odd cheap takedown, be a little bit weak off his back. He's sloppy on the feet, bad defensively. Sola's more technical, but I just don't see Sola being able to keep up with the pace Jones sets and surviving the hell that Jones is going to try and drag him through. I think this is one of those matchups which only really has two outcomes. I think either Sola will win by flash KO. It ain't easy to knock Mason Jones out, to be fair. If we take a look at his record, you can see that his only two career losses were both decisions against Mike Davis and Ludwig Klein. But notably, he's fought some big punches and been able to hang with them without getting himself knocked out. He obviously did get rocked a couple times by Ludwig Klein, but Onama is a big puncher. To be fair, Mike Davis is quite a big puncher as well. Jeremy Stevens is a big puncher. I know he's old now, but you know, power's the last thing to go. And so whilst these guys have hurt Jones, none have been able to get him out of there. So will Sola be the first guy to knock Jones out? It's possible, but it's unlikely. So I think the two outcomes, well, actually there's three outcomes. Sola by flash KO, nothing we can do about that. If you're worried about losing bets because your guy getting randomly knocked out, probably shouldn't be betting on the UFC. The second outcome, I think Jones will wear Sola down and win a decision, or he'll get a late stoppage if he completely melts Sola with the pace that he puts on him. So if we take a look at the other odds on this fight, I don't like the fight spreads. I think the odds are a bit too steep for me to take Sola at plus 3.5. Yeah, I think, you know what, this is one of those fights. I'm not going to bet it. I don't love it the bet enough to bet it, but the odds on the under are interesting to me. The odds on the under are very interesting to me because with Jones's style, the fact that he constantly forces you to engage, when you have a guy like that has a kill or be killed style that's constantly forcing you to engage, a lot of the time something's got to give, right? You know, if Jones is going to constantly force Sola to engage, draw him into big exchanges, he's either going to wear Sola down and get a finish, more than likely, or he's going to get flash KO'd. It's not going to be easy for Sola to hang with Jones for the full 3 rounds. Like, the guys he's going to decisions with are either tough as nails like Jeremy Stephens, or a much higher level than Sola, like your Ludwig Kleins, your David Onamas, your Mike Davises. Like, he took Baraniewski down and stopped him in the second round, and, you know, Oki, in my opinion, is better than Sola. I know you can't use MMA math, but you get my point. The under is interesting to me in this matchup. So yeah, I hope you found that useful. Let's move on to the next one. Now let's break down the fight between Kurtis Campbell and Danny Silva, which, in my opinion, is one of the most interesting fights on the card. Likely to be one of the most competitive fights on the card as well, even though Campbell is a pretty big favourite. So he's currently a 1.42 favourite, which is minus 238 for an implied probability of 70%. And Silva is a 2.89 underdog, which is plus 189 for an implied probability of 35%. So if we look at the fighter comparison tool, we don't have a whole lot of information available on Campbell because obviously it is his UFC debut. But this is one of those very, very interesting fights because when I research it, there's not really any reason why Silva should be a big underdog here. If anything, I would have Silva as a slight favourite, which means I am extremely tempted to bet Danny Silva this weekend. I haven't bet him yet, but I am extremely tempted to. And I probably will end up pulling the trigger on him. Maybe small for reasons I will explain in this video, but very tempted by Danny Silva. So how do these two match up from a stylistic point of view, and why is Silva such an interesting bet here? Well, if you're not familiar with Kurtis Campbell, and you're probably not because he's making his debut and his Contender Series fight didn't last very long, he's very similar in fighting style to Paddy Pimblett. So on the feet, he's got that kind of awkward, herky-jerky karate style. And on the ground, you know, he's a strong, physically imposing grappler. He does look to grapple, you know, reasonably frequently, not as frequently as Paddy. I think grappling's kind of Paddy's, you know, primary fighting style. Campbell, I would say, mixes it up more. He's more of like a 50-50 striker and grappler. But there's no doubt that he's a pretty strong, pretty physically imposing grappler. Where this fight gets tricky is based on past performances, you can see why Campbell, to some extent, is the favourite here, because he's been very dominant over his prior opponents. But Danny Silva, and I hate to sound like a broken record on this card, but Danny Silva is very similar to your Mason Joneses and your Nathaniel Woods in that his biggest strengths are his cardio, his toughness, his durability, and his work rate. And guys like Danny Silva and Nathaniel Wood are an absolute nightmare to face in your UFC debut. Because when you've got these guys like Kurtis, Campbell, Losene, Keita, who, you know, have been competing for a while on the regional circuit in smaller promotions, obviously the level of opponent they're facing isn't going to be as high as the level they're going to be facing in the UFC. And so they're not used to guys giving them tons of resistance. So if you look at Kurtis Campbell's fights, he's had a couple tough fights, but when he takes guys down, he's able to take them down pretty easily and control them on the ground pretty easily. So if he did get into any trouble on the feet, or if he did feel a little bit tired, he's got his grappling to fall back on. He can take him to the ground, do his thing on the ground, and get a comfortable win. When you run into guys like Nathaniel Wood, guys like Danny Silva, it ain't as easy to do that. And not only will they tire out and go into a defensive shell as quickly as these lower level guys that you faced on the regional circuit, but when they start to sense you're wearing down, they will turn the pace up. Or if you do put them in some bad positions on the ground, or if you hurt them on the feet, they're not going to panic and cave like these lower level guys, because they're tough enough and experienced enough to weather storms and drag you into deep water. And what's particularly interesting about this matchup is that Silva does have all the attributes required to cause a less experienced debutant big problems. When we look at Nathaniel Wood, there is one major weakness in Wood's skill set which Keita is well positioned to exploit, which is Nathaniel Wood does get dinged a lot on the feet because he's a bit reckless, he's not the best defensively, and Keita covers distance quickly. He's got big power in his hands. Silva doesn't have any major weaknesses that Campbell's well positioned to exploit, because Silva is very tough, very durable, has amazing cardio, and he's trained with the likes of TJ Dillashaw, Cub Swanson, and so he's not the easiest guy to take down, control. He doesn't fade under pressure, or he doesn't buckle under pressure. He doesn't fade in a high-paced fight. He's a cardio machine. And so this is one of those matchups where I understand Kurtis is more skilled, more dangerous than Silva, but toughness, cardio, and durability go very far in this sport. And those are things that inexperienced debutants often run into problems against, because you don't get a whole lot of that on the regional circuit outside of the UFC. So Silva is an extremely tempting bet this weekend. I haven't decided if I'm pulling the trigger on him yet, but I probably will. Let me know if you're watching this on YouTube what you think in the comments below, or let me know in the chat room. I think Silva could potentially give Kurtis Campbell hell. What I don't like about betting on Silva is that Campbell is a charismatic character that is going to have the crowd behind him. Home advantage is going to be a big deal. So in order for Silva to win on Saturday night, he's going to either need to finish Campbell, which won't be easy because Silva's not really a finisher, or he's going to have to win 2 out of the 3 rounds beyond all reasonable doubt to win a 29-28 decision at a level where the judges couldn't possibly rob him, which is not going to be easy to do in the UK against a British fighter. But I mean, if this fight were on neutral territory, I would be all over Silva. I wouldn't even hesitate. I wouldn't even think about it. But at these odds, I probably shouldn't hesitate or think about it either, because, you know, to only give Danny Silva a 35% chance of winning this fight is absurd. If you give him a 40% chance or better, which I do believe is perfectly reasonable, considering I would personally make him the slight favourite, then you've got a very nice, at least 5% margin over the bookie. If we take a look at the other odds on this fight, I do think the plus 3.5 on Danny Silva is a phenomenal bet in the even money odds range. And whilst I can't tell you yet if I'm going to be betting the money line on Silva, I will definitely be betting the fight spread. There's no doubt about that. Maybe Campbell shows up looking better than ever and smokes him, but I think that's very unlikely. I mean, Danny Silva hung with Kevin Vallejos for 3 rounds. Campbell ain't no Vallejos, I'll tell you that for free. I do think the fight's quite likely to go over because, like I say, Silva's not really a finisher and he's tough as nails. But then you never know. Maybe Campbell just melts under his pressure. So yeah, this is Silva or pass all day long. There's no way I would be touching Campbell in this fight. These odds are fantasy land. They have him at 1.42 minus 238 and implied probability of 70%. I mean, you gotta be on drugs to bet this guy. Crazy. It makes absolutely no sense to me at all. Now let's move on to the next fight, which is going to be Christian Leroy Duncan versus Roman Dolidze. Very good stylistic matchup for Christian Leroy Duncan. Obviously, these regional shows are put on with a bunch of fighters from the country that the fans are from, obviously. This card's in London. It's packed full of British fighters. And on every regional show, the UFC always chucks some matchups on there where they give the home fighters some favourable matchups, so that the home fans can celebrate some big wins, be entertained and be happy that their guys won. And I think that's what we've got here. Out of all the fights on this card, which features a British fighter versus a foreigner, this is the one fight I can look to and I can go, you know, this is one for the British fans, because this is a very tough stylistic matchup for Roman Dolidze. We know Dolidze slows his fights we're on. We know he's a little bit stiff and flat-footed. He's also getting quite old at 37 years old. And we know he's a little bit slow and sloppy on the feet. Not the best defensively. Christian Leroy Duncan is difficult to take down, difficult to hold down, fast, athletic, accurate. He's a sniper on the feet. I think he dances around Dolidze and lights him up in this fight. I think it'll be a very, very, very comfortable night's work for Duncan. And, yeah, he should win pretty easily. I know he's a big favourite, 1.20 minus 491 for an implied probability of 83%. Too steep of a price for me to pay, but I do think Duncan wins this very easily. Wouldn't touch the fight spreads on this. Well, actually, I don't hate the minus 3.5 on Duncan, because outside of Dolidze getting a flash knockdown or something, I don't see how he's going to win a round. I think the skill gap is too big. I don't generally like to take the minus fight spreads, but the Duncan one at 1.50 is a little bit interesting to me. And if I were going to bet the over-under in the even money odds range, I would take the under, but I'm not going to bet that. So let's now move on to the next fight between Ivo Baraniewski versus Austen Lane. And I think this is one of those fights for the Just Bleed boys, where Austen Lane's probably going to get brutally knocked out. Now, to be fair, like a few of the other fighters on this card, such as Mantas Condrais and Brando Perisic, we don't know tons about Mr. Baraniewski, other than the fact that he was in an absolute fucking chaotic war with Ivo Aslan in his UFC debut. But if you take a look at his record, you can see, for the most part, first round finishes, and he hasn't been past round one since May 2024. So 2 years ago was the last time he went to a decision, and I can't find that fight online. So we don't know what Baraniewski's cardio is like. Might not be that much of an issue though, because Austen Lane's cardio isn't exactly great. We know from the Ivo Aslan fight, Baraniewski is fast, explosive on the feet. He's also fucking durable. He ate some bombs from Aslan and was able to hang in there and tough it out in what was a very tough debut, because Aslan came after him hard. So we don't know anything about Baraniewski's takedown offense and ground game, which is a bit of a concern, because we know Austen Lane has been known to use grappling heavy game plans against guys like Rebelis de Spania, and actually against Jonata Denise, although he ended up losing that fight. So we don't know anything about Baraniewski's takedown offense and ground game, which straight away does make his odds a little bit absurd at an implied probability of 86%. So this is one of those fights where if you do want to bet this matchup, obviously it's dog or pass. Obviously you've got to take Austen Lane, because Baraniewski is completely unplayable at these odds. Having said that, you know, he's probably going to get brutally knocked out in round one, because Baraniewski looked pretty nasty in his past fights. And he's a victim of his own success, right? We don't know much about him because he kills everyone within a couple minutes. So Baraniewski's probably going to win, but don't have enough footage on him to even consider betting him in that odds range. In terms of the fight spreads, not a lot we can do. In terms of the over-under, not a lot we can do there either. Now let's break down the fight between Michael Page and Sam Patterson. Now, if you've been watching my breakdown videos for a while, you'll know that over the years, I frequently talk about one of the most difficult aspects of making money betting on this sport being how inconsistent fighters are. Just on this card alone, we've spoken about how I love to bet on guys like Mason Jones and Nathaniel Wood because you can always trust them to show up and perform to their full potential. Whether they win or lose, you know that Mason Jones and Nathaniel Wood are always going to show up and perform in a way that you expect them to perform. But that's actually a really rare quality in mixed martial arts. And so often, we get these fights like Michael Page versus Sam Patterson, where we can look at it, classic striker versus grappler matchup, and we know that if Sam Patterson grapples hard in this fight, it doesn't necessarily mean he will win, but it exponentially increases his chances of winning. But, and if you haven't been watching this sport long or you're not an experienced gambler, it would amaze you how often fighters like Patterson, who have a clear and obvious path to victory, do the complete opposite of the thing that gives them the best chance of winning. And you'd be surprised how often a guy like Sam Patterson will go out there, try to stand and strike, and either get outstruck or brutally knocked out. That's the most difficult aspect of making money betting on this sport, because no matter how much you know about the sport, no matter how much research you do, ultimately, there's no way for us to know what game plan and strategy a fighter is going to execute when they get in there on Saturday night. And fighters are painfully inconsistent. If you've been betting this sport for a while, I bet you've got countless stories of when you've placed a bet on a fighter knowing that if they just did this one thing they would win very easily, and then they go out and set fire to your money by doing the total opposite, and they look absolutely nothing like you'd expected them to. Perhaps they look nothing like they have in the past. This is a very common phenomenon when you bet on the sport of mixed martial arts, and it's the reason why I make no secret of the fact that I specialize in live betting on this sport, because when you live bet this sport, you can see exactly what you're getting for your money before you put your money in danger. So when you place a bet on Sam Patterson this weekend or Michael Page, if you're betting on Patterson, you're expecting him to go out there and grapple. And if he doesn't, your money is dead in the water. If you place a bet on Michael Page, you're placing the bet on the basis that Sam Patterson isn't going to grapple, because if he does, you know Page is in a lot of trouble. But when you place pre-fight bets on the UFC, you are at the mercy of the universe. And if your fighter fights injured or sick or has a bad weight cut or just isn't feeling it on the day or doesn't use the game plan, the strategy, the tactics you expected them to do or expected them to use, your chances of winning reduce significantly. When you live bet on the sport, you can see exactly what you're getting for your money before you put your money at risk, before you put it in danger. That's why we've been able to make a profit on 72% of months, which is absolutely absurd, and it's the reason why we've been profitable on 67% of events. A profit chart that looks this good in the world of sports betting is virtually unheard of. Yes, we have the odd dip here and there, the odd break-even period. We've had a nasty dip the last couple of weeks, but the trend is clear and the stats are undeniable. We make a profit almost every month of the year, which is incredible, because if you watch the UFC every week, you can basically get paid to watch the sport you love. And the best way I can describe why live betting on this sport is so powerful is, like I say, before you put your money in danger, you can see exactly what you're getting. So I always use the analogy of t-shirts, right? How often have you seen a t-shirt that you've bought online on a website and the print looks vibrant, the colour looks great, the material looks good quality, and then it arrives in the mail, it doesn't fit right, the print isn't as vibrant, maybe the ink washes off after a couple washes, The fabric just doesn't feel as good. The material doesn't feel as good. The quality is not great. And the quality of the product was way worse than you thought it would be based on the pictures on the website, right? Where the fit looks great on the model and you're really disappointed. Now, that's pre-fight betting, right? You may order the t-shirt off the website. It might be the greatest t-shirt you've ever seen in your life. It might be even better than you expected. Sometimes it might be a lot worse than you expected, right? Fabric, poor quality, bad fit, poor quality print. That's pre-fight betting. You don't really know what you're going to get on fight night. Live betting is far superior because live betting is where you can go into the store, you can see the t-shirt in the store, you can pick it up, you can feel the fabric, feel the quality, see the color, the vibrancy of the print, you can try it on, make sure the fit's okay. With live betting, you know exactly what you're going to get. Now that doesn't mean when you go home and wash it, it doesn't shrink or the ink doesn't fade or it might tear or something, you know. Nothing's ever 100% certain, but you've got a much better idea of what you're actually getting for your money when you can actually feel it and see it and hold it, and you eliminate a massive element of risk by, you know, seeing exactly what you're getting for your money in the moment. That's what live betting is. It's far superior to pre-fight betting, and it's the reason why we've been able to make a profit most months of the year over the 10 years that I've been tracking results on my website. So if you want to join the live betting group and just see what it's like, see what I do, learn from me, learn from the best in the world, you can join this weekend for just $35. No subscriptions, no recurring payments. Come join the group. There's only 30 spaces available for this weekend, but come check it out. So if you've got any concerns about the way that it works or you're unsure if it's right for you, this is your opportunity to see why I keep telling you every single week in every single video that this is an incredible opportunity staring you in the face where you can earn money almost every weekend of the year watching the sport you love. And if you're worried about how you're going to be able to live bet because you're behind on stream and you watch on maybe Paramount or TNT Sports and you can't live bet because you're 30 seconds or a minute behind what the betting sites are seeing, don't worry. I've built a system that has solved this problem for you. The bets that you will receive from me in the live betting group are based on a real-time broadcast that the actual betting sites are watching. And on top of that, it gets even better. In the past, when you would have joined my live betting group, it wasn't the best viewing experience because I would commentate the fights from a betting perspective and tell you what to bet. So that if you were watching 30 seconds to a minute behind on the stream, it was a pretty shitty user experience because you'd know what was happening in the fight before you saw it because I'd be telling you what was going on. It spoiled the enjoyment of the sport a bit. I've also solved this problem. We've now got spoiler-free live betting where you don't even have to listen to my commentary. It's still there if you want it. You can still listen to my commentary if you want it. But if you don't want it, if you don't want to listen to the audio feed, we've got real-time notifications where anywhere in the world, sub 1 second, you can be notified if there's a betting opportunity. So you can be sat back, relaxing, watching the fights, just have your phone open. And if I find a bet, you'll get a notification. Faster than Telegram, faster than any other betting group in the world. I've built a completely custom system to do this. Totally from the ground up, from scratch, from nothing. And it enables you to enjoy the fights without getting any spoilers from my commentary. Give it a try. If you're unsure of anything, leave a comment below and I'll answer you. Or head on over to the chat room. I'll be online all weekend. Head on over to the chat and I'll be in there. If you do join the live betting group this weekend, take advantage of this promo. I'll also give you access to all my football bets for the weekends. I think it's going to be a good weekend for football as well. We're profitable on football. If you go to betting, go to football, you can see there's tons of data about my performance on football. We've had a good week actually this week. We are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13... 12 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 12 and 7 on bets this week on football, so not bad. Had a couple nice underdogs as well. 1.5 here, 1.6 here. Not bad. So yeah, get in on the football, get in on the UFC. It's going to be a great weekend of betting on sports. Very confident across both the football and the UFC. we'll make a profit. We do almost every weekend. And because on that note, if we go to my profit and loss by day, you can see that we've got 7.2 ROI over the space of about 1,000 bets on Saturdays. So Saturdays are my most profitable day of the week. So if you join the live betting group, good chance you'll make some money this weekend on football and the UFC, hopefully both. And I don't run these promotions very often because first impressions are everything. And what I find is if someone joins a live betting group and then we have a bad first 2 or 3 events while they're with me, they tend to just leave and they form an opinion on my capability based on those first few events they experience. But what I find is if the first 2 or 3 events with me are great, they tend to stick with me for years because they see the power of what I do. So the reason why I've picked this weekend to run this promotion is I think this is going to be a very good card for live betting. So if you do come and join the team, just even for this event, I'm pretty confident you'll have a good experience. I think we're going to do great, and it's very likely we'll make a profit. So don't do things like this too often, but it's a good opportunity for some of you to come and see exactly what I do. And even if we don't make a profit, you can't guarantee what will happen. I think win or lose, you'll be impressed by what we do, and you'll probably learn quite a lot, which will give you some value even if we can't make you some cash. But hopefully we will. Try it out. I'll leave a link in the description below to this page where you can join. Hope to see you there. And what I'll do, you'll gain instant access to everything on the site if you join, and I'll email you a link for where you can basically get access to all the football bets as well. So go check it out, get on it. Happy days, happy days. And yeah, moving back to this Patterson versus Michael Venom Page fight, it basically comes down to whether or not Patterson will grapple. It really is as simple as that. If he stays standing, he's bad defensively, doesn't move his head very much, he's going to get smoked on the feet. If he comes in with a grappling heavy game plan, I think he'll do very well. So just to kind of quantify that dynamic for you so you can see it for yourself, I just thought it'd be a really good idea to bring up some fight footage so that you can see firsthand what I am talking about. So apologies, the audio will probably play here. Oh, we managed to stop it in time. So if we go to Patterson's fight against which one should we play? The Lenae's fight is quite a good one. Here we go. It's quite a good one. So what I really like about Patterson on the ground is he does have that killer instinct. So on the ground he's got that killer instinct. So if we just skip ahead here. So we've seen Michael Venom Page struggle on the ground in the past against, you know, guys like Kevin Holland, guys like Ian Gary. But neither Holland nor Ian Gary really had that killer instinct of causing problems on the ground. With someone like Patterson, he really does. So he's got a dangerous submission game, good grappling control, nasty ground and pound, heavy from top position. If Patterson comes in this fight with a grappling heavy game plan, I think he can cause Michael Venom Page a lot of trouble. So Patterson just took the back, got the rear naked choke there, very, very nice. The other fight where we see a finish on the ground from Patterson, if we just skip through, turn the subtitles off. Here we go. You see a bit of the grappling control of Patterson. So Patterson very bad defensively. Michael Venom Page will light him up on the feet. But on the ground, he is a bit of a nightmare. Very, very nasty. So here you can see it's actually Crosby hunting for the takedown. But Patterson quickly goes to the body lock, looks for that outside trip, gets a takedown very easily, straight into mount. Obviously Crosby gave that up pretty easily. But then you can see again, just like with Patterson, aggressively attacking with a rear naked choke, gets a head and arm choke, and puts Crosby away relatively quickly. So if we now go and take a look at Michael Venom Page, I just want to show you how bad his takedown defense is. So I don't really want to watch the Cannonier fight. it says he defended 5 out of 7 takedowns, which is pretty impressive. But Cannonier didn't really fully commit to a lot of those takedowns. We see a lot more useful footage, in my opinion, in the Ian Garry and Kevin Holland fights. So we're going to focus on those. So if we start off with round 1, what I want you to pay attention to is just how easily Michael Venom Page goes down in these fights. And you can see there, Garry kind of catches a kick, turns it into a takedown. And now Page isn't in that bad of a position. He's been taken down relatively close to the cage. So he's got the cage in a good position for him to wall walk back up to his feet, which you can see he's trying to do now. He's trying to get his back tight to the cage and wall walk back up. And you can see Garry keeps control of that body and just drags him right back down. So what you notice from Page is a real lack of physicality on the ground. And when guys get him down, generally they find it quite easy to hold him down. So you can see Garry keeps the body locked the whole time. So every time Page manages to start working his way back up to his feet, Garry just sticks to him like glue. And he's able to drag him back down. So in this position, Garry eventually gets the back, locks up the body triangle. Obviously, it's a bad place for Page to be. Page spends the rest of the round having his back controlled by Garry. So seeing what Patterson has just done to Johan Linnaeus and Kiefer Crosby, you could kind of see with how slick, you know, Patterson is on the ground, how he could cause Page a problem on the ground as well. So if we skip through, from here you can see Garry has got to the body lock again, but finds it more difficult to get Page down in this round, to the extent that he ends up just rolling for a leg, which is a strange move, to be fair. And then into round 3, again, Gary's not a natural grappler though, right? Gary's more of a striker. Then into round 3, towards the end of the round, you can see Page gives up another cheap takedown here. So Garry again gets back to that body lock, again hits an outside trip. And for me, it's just worrying how easily Page goes down. He's one of these guys that if you get in on his legs, generally speaking, he'll go down quite easily. And just like in the first round where Garry was able to maintain back control, he keeps back control for the rest of that round. So the other fight that I wanted to show you is the Kevin Holland fight, because similar to Ian Garry, Kevin Holland's not a natural grappler, right? More of a kickboxer, and it's quite unusual to actually see Holland try to grapple. So if we just skip through again, we're not focusing on the striking, or it'll make this breakdown video super duper long. We're just focusing on the grappling. If we just skip through, there we go. So one thing, like I say, you really notice about Michael Venom Page is how easy he is to get down and hold down when you fully commit to the takedown. So you can see Holland here gets the body lock, similar to what Ian Garry had. Starts working to take the back like Ian Garry did. But here you can see how easily Page goes down. And now Kevin Holland mounts him like he's never taken a BJJ class in his life. And Holland just easily holds him down until he basically gives Page enough space to stand back up. I mean, look at how much space Holland gives him as he postures up there. Gives him tons of space to just stand back up, which is typical Kevin Holland, bad fight IQ. So Holland, again, similar to Ian Garry, showed how easy it is to take Michael Page down and hold him down. We see it again here in round 3. Where it gets to that body lock. And again, look at the legs. As soon as you get in on Page's legs, he goes down so easily. It's so easy to upset his balance for a guy that is so athletic and mobile. But look at this. How easily he goes down. Almost looked like he was going to try and hit a switch there. Holland just sticks to him like glue. And then, kind of again, typical Kevin Holland, lets him off the hook. But yeah, for me, Patterson is a better grappler than both Kevin Holland and Ian Garry. And so if Patterson were to come in with a grappling heavy game plan and obtain the positions that Garry and Holland were able to obtain on Page, not only do I think Patterson would at the very least be able to do a lot more damage from those positions, but I actually think there's a pretty good chance he would submit Page, because Page looked kind of clueless on the ground. So this is one of those fights where both guys have got extreme advantages in the area that the other is weak. Patterson doesn't move his head very much. He's very bad defensively. He's a sitting duck to the knockout. Page should light him up and outstrike him on the feet very easily. On the ground, though, Page extremely low level, and as soon as you get in on his legs, it's very easy to upset his balance and take him down. So for me personally, this is one of those fights where I always say, let the odds do the work for you. Based on the fact that both these guys have got extreme advantages in the area that the other is weak, I think this is about as true a 50-50 fight as you will ever see. And so for me, there is no way that you can bet Michael Page in this fight. For me, that is a true negative EV bet, because his odds carry an implied probability of 66%, which means if this is a 50-50 fight, you're giving up a 16% margin to the bookies. Whereas if you bet Patterson at an implied probability of 39%, and you do consider this to be a true 50-50 fight, you've got a nice 11% margin over the bookies. I don't really understand why Page is the favourite here. I get every round starts standing and Patterson is a sitting duck on the feet. But Michael Venom Page is also 9 years older than Patterson, and we know the younger fighter wins around 70% of the time when there's a 9-year age gap in a fight. And Page isn't going to be able to use his striking advantage if he gets put on his back, or Patterson takes him down, gets his back, whatever. You get what I'm trying to say. So for me, this is one of those fights where you let the odds do the work for you. Even if you think Page is going to win, Patterson is still the better bet here. If you disagree, please let me know in the chat room on the website, or let me know in the comments below. But I don't see how you could bet Michael Page in this fight. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Now, in terms of the fight spreads and the over/under, I do think the under is a very, very good bet on this fight, and I will be betting the under. The reason why I like the under is because I see only two outcomes in this fight. Either Patterson takes Michael Venom Page down and melts him, either with ground and pound or submits him, or Patterson gets brutally knocked out. I don't see any in between, because this is one of those fights where both guys have got extreme advantages in the area that the other is weak. So, you know, if this fight does go to a decision, the only way that I see it happening is if we get one of those really strange Michael Venom Page performances we get from time to time, like we got against Douglas Lima, where he kind of just dances around and does a whole lot of nothing for 15 minutes and just kind of showboats, lands 3 strikes around, outpoints Patterson, wins 30-27, is the most boring fight ever, right? That could happen, and I think that's the only scenario in which the fight could go to a decision. But with that being the only scenario, I'm happy to take the under 2.5 rounds in the even money odds range, because I think the other two most likely outcomes would be Patterson doesn't grapple, and because he's a sitting duck on the feet, Page brutally knocks him out, or Patterson does grapple and he takes Page down, overwhelms him on the ground and submits him or stops him with ground and pound. Those are the two most likely outcomes. I don't really think anything else is too realistic. So, you know what? In the even money odds range, rather than gambling and trying to predict whether Patterson will grapple or not, none of us have a crystal ball. But what we can do is put our money in strong positions and know that if the most likely outcome plays out, we're going to get close to a 1-to-1 risk to reward ratio payout on the under 2.5 rounds at 1.80 minus 250 minus 125. Sorry, that's a good risk to reward ratio for me. I think that's a great value bet, and I'd be very, very surprised if it were to lose. You know, odds of 1.80. If we come up to the betting calculator on the website, this website's going to have a huge upgrade in the next few weeks as well. It's going to get a massive speed boost. It's already pretty fucking quick, but we're going to get an even better server. You can see that carries an implied probability of 55.56% So personally, if I were capping the under on this fight, I would cap it at like 70, 75, maybe even 80%. So that's a really good margin of value over the bookies. We like that a lot. We like it a lot. So yeah, that's why I see Page Patterson going down. Really hope you found that useful. Now let's move on to the next one. Now let's break down the main event between Movsar Evloev and Lerone Murphy, which is a strange main event because, you know, with this being in London, you'd think they'd want to give the British fighter a favourable matchup, but this is actually a very, very tough stylistic matchup for Lerone Murphy that I would expect him to lose, and I'll be showing you a bit of footage so you can understand the reasons why this is a very tough fight for Lerone Murphy. I would love to see Murphy get the win. You know, they've definitely slow-rolled his path to a title, and unfortunately, before he gets a potential title shot, they're giving him one of the worst stylistic matchups I can think for him at the top of the division. So pretty brutal from the UFC. We were already talking earlier on in the video about how they haven't treated Nathaniel Wood particularly well, or in fact barely any fighter in the UFC particularly well in recent years. I think Murphy's kind of getting screwed with this matchmaking, but it is what it is. Hopefully he can still find a way to get the job done. If you're going to be watching these fights this weekend, just to remind you, I'm running a promotion where you can join my live betting group this weekend for $35. So if you're curious about what I do, if you're curious about why I talk about live betting being such a great opportunity, now you can come and see exactly what I do. You can learn from me, learn how I do things, and whether we make money or not, I'm pretty sure you're going to enjoy it. Very good chance you will make money though. As you can see, we make a profit in 72% of months and in 67% of events. So if you watch every UFC event live, you basically get paid to watch the sport you love. And if you've watched my videos for years, you'll know I don't usually run promotions like this, and that's because people always form their opinions based on, you know, first impressions. And I find that when people join the live betting group, if their first couple of events with me don't go well, that kind of, you know, sets the tone for how they feel about what I do forever, and they form an opinion very quickly. But if they join me and we do great, if we have, you know, really profitable first few events, they tend to stay with me for years. So I don't like running these short promotions, because if a bunch of you join this weekend and we do terribly, that's going to be your perception of what I do forever. So whenever I do run promotions like this, I always make sure I pick an event which we're very likely to perform well on. And I think we will do well on this London card. There's 14 fights on the card. There's great stylistic matchups top to bottom. And these low-key fight night cards are the type of UFC event we do tend to perform pretty well on. So can't guarantee you'll make a profit, can't guarantee you'll make money, but I can guarantee you'll learn a lot. And, you know, if you've never thought about live betting on the sport, or if you've tried it and it hasn't gone particularly well because you're delayed on a stream, and you're wondering why I keep talking about this, I think you should give it a try. If you're watching the fights 30 seconds, 60 seconds behind the actual live broadcast because you're watching on maybe Paramount or CBS or, you know, TNT Sports, these are all problems that I've solved. These are problems that I've fixed for you. We live bet on a real-time broadcast, and so whilst I can't show you that broadcast, obviously for copyright reasons and all that stuff, you can be safe in the knowledge that when I am recommending bets to you, it is based on the exact broadcast the betting sites are seeing, which means you will be able to place your bets ahead of 99.9% of other people that live bet this sport, which gives you a huge edge. And no matter where you are in the world, you get these live bets from me in under a second. You don't have to worry about delay. You don't have to worry about being 30 to 60 seconds behind on a stream. You're in good hands. Every single challenge you've run into with live betting in the past, I've solved with my system. And if you don't want spoilers, if you want to enjoy the fights, you don't want to listen to my commentary, you don't want to listen to the audio feed, we've sorted that problem out too. We've now got a real-time notification system where you can kick back, enjoy watching the fights. You don't have to listen to me. Just have your phone open, and as soon as a live betting opportunity pops up, you'll get a notification. So you can grab your phone, place the bet quickly, and well, preferably on a laptop or a computer, because you can get in faster on live bets than you can on a phone if you use a computer or a laptop. But you know, if you're unsure how to maximize the money you can make live betting on this sport, if you've got any questions, slide by the chat room. I'll be online all weekend. We'll have a good chat. And if you do join the live betting group for this weekend, there's only 30 spaces available. So if you do get in, you'll also get access to all my football bets. As you can see, we are profitable betting on football. If you come to the website, go to betting, go to football betting. There's a ton of data on here about how I perform betting football. Many of you will know I'm trying to branch out into football and crack football to give me some security. It's never good to have all your eggs in one basket, and if anything were to happen to the UFC, I'd be totally screwed. So been working hard over the last 3 or 4 years to crack football betting, and I am profitable. Not as profitable as I want to be yet, but I'm improving. I'm getting better all the time. But the good news for you, if you do tail my football bets for this weekend, if we scroll down and we look at ROI by day of the week, you can see we perform at a world-class level on Saturdays. We've got an ROI of 7.2% over a sample size of 1,000 bets, which is phenomenal. If you go do a bit of Googling on how impressive those stats are, you'll find out that that is like elite tier sports betting. And the reason why I'm able to perform so well on Saturdays is on Saturdays there are thousands of football matches that take place all over the world. And so because there's so many games running throughout the day, I can cherry pick the games that I know based on, you know, the experience of placing over 4,000 bets on this sport. I've got experience of knowing what kind of games will be better for betting than others, so I can cherry pick the absolute strongest positions for us on Saturdays and place the absolute top tier, best of the best bets, which do win a very good percentage of the time. And that's why my stats on Saturdays are much better than my stats on the other days of the week. So yeah, if you take advantage of this promotion, get all my bets for the whole weekend, have a full day of betting with me on Saturday. And with how I tend to perform on football on Saturdays, and the fact that we make a profit on 67% of UFC events, and this profit chart is one of the best you'll ever see in the world of sports betting, very consistent, you got a good chance of having some fun, learning a hell of a lot, and making some cash at the same time. So hopefully I'll see you there. There's 30 spaces available. I'll leave a link in the description below. Any questions, slide on by the chat room, and I think you'll enjoy it. So Evloev versus Lerone Murphy. We know Evloev is a well-rounded fighter, but for the most part this is a striker versus grappler matchup, where we know if the fight stays standing, Murphy's probably got a bit of an edge. If the fight goes to the ground, Evloev definitely has an edge. There's no debate in that. If the fight stays standing though, I wouldn't be totally sure Murphy has it all his own way. This is because at times he can be a relatively low volume striker. Not always. At times he can be aggressive, but at other times there are long periods of inactivity from him on the feet. And Evloev is a guy that has been getting more aggressive and throwing more volume on the feet in recent years. Now there's a huge power and athleticism difference between these two, where Murphy hits a lot harder. He's much more physically imposing than Evloev. Evloev is more of a volume striker that just looks to touch you on the feet, whereas Murphy can actually hurt you and damage you on the feet. But if Murphy isn't careful, I could see some of these rounds either slipping away from him or being closer than they need to be, just through a lack of volume and a lack of activity. But there's no doubt that on the feet, Murphy will be landing the harder, more damaging, more impactful shots. Now, the biggest issue with Murphy throughout his career has been that his takedown offense and ground game is very bad. But because Murphy is very tanky, very physically imposing, very strong, he's one of these guys that can, you know, work his way back up to his feet generally pretty quickly if he gets taken down. Now, having said that, he hasn't fought many grapplers at the level of Evloev. But where this matchup gets interesting is that Evloev isn't the most physically imposing grappler. He's a very skilled grappler, but he's not the most physically imposing grappler. So what is interesting about this matchup is if Evloev does take Murphy down, and I expect he will because Murphy's takedown offense isn't great, I do think it will be difficult for Evloev to hold Murphy down because Murphy's very good at just standing back up, Derek Lewis, Mark Hunt style, and without Evloev having the most physically imposing ground game, I think Murphy's physicality is going to enable him to get out of some really tough positions on the ground. But where this fight does get really difficult for Murphy is that Evloev does have good chain wrestling, and he's very good at sticking to his opponents like glue and just wet blanketing them. And this is where it will get difficult for Murphy, because while it may be hard for Evloev to keep Murphy on the ground, I think Evloev is a persistent enough grappler and a skilled enough grappler to stick to Murphy and make it difficult for Murphy to kind of shake him off. Now, I do think a danger for Evloev in this fight is that with Murphy having home advantage, the kind of things that Evloev is going to be looking to do in this fight, in terms of sticking to Murphy like glue with his grappling, are probably not going to get a very good reaction from the crowd and are probably not going to score that highly. So, you know, if Evloev has 3.5 minutes or 4 minutes of grappling control up against the cage where he sticks to Murphy like glue and smothers him in pressure, that can easily be negated when a guy's got home advantage and the crowd behind him. If Murphy just lands a few big shots, gets a big reaction from the crowd, right? You know that kind of dynamic that I'm talking about. So Evloev doesn't have a judge-pleasing style in the context of this matchup, with Murphy being a popular hometown fighter. But I do think it's going to be very difficult for Murphy to keep Evloev off of him. And so what we now need to do is we just wrap this one up, is show you a bit of footage of Lerone Murphy's takedown offense and ground game, so you can kind of see firsthand why it is a bit of an issue. If we actually run over to the stats as well, so you can see here he defended 7 of 11 takedowns against Josh Emmett, 2 of 3 takedowns against Dan Ige, 2 and 2 against Ricardo Ramos. But he is quite easy to get down, to be fair, and you're going to see a little bit of that here against Josh Emmett. So we're just going to skip through because we're focused on the grappling. We can't afford to focus on the striking or we'll be here all day. So he catches a kick there, turns it into a takedown. Murphy just stands back up. Very nice. It's a recurring theme throughout Murphy's career, actually. Whenever he gets taken down, he's very good at just standing back up. So here's another takedown. So Emmett shoots a nice double leg there. And you can see Murphy just keeps his legs too close together up against the cage. Way too close together. So Emmett's able to elevate him, dump him on the ground, and jump into his guard. So if we just skip through, you can see that he's been taken down about 4 minutes 30 seconds into round 2. We're just going to skip through. And what you'll notice from Murphy is that he's very good at just standing back up. He's just a strong, tanky, physically imposing guy. Emmett's strong and tanky as well. You can see when Murphy commits to standing back up, generally speaking, he can just power his way back up to his feet one way or another. So if we keep skipping through, you can see Emmett use a bit of chain wrestling here. Tries to upset Murphy's balance, but Murphy is strong, great balance, physically imposing. If we keep rolling, so another grappling exchange here. Murphy was anticipating a takedown entry there, so he went to sprawl out of it and lost his balance. Another takedown here towards the end of round 3. Again, Emmett, similar to round 1, catches a kick, turns it into a takedown, jumps into his guard. But again, Murphy, when he commits to standing back up, even with Emmett on top of him, he literally just stands back up. And you'll see Murphy do this over and over and over and over again through his career. And even though Josh Emmett is very old, you know, he's still quite a physically imposing guy. I really think Evloev is going to struggle to control Murphy in this one. Could be wrong, but Murphy is very tanky. Having said that, I do think, because Murphy, from a technical point of view, is quite a low-level grappler, I do think he will struggle to keep Evloev off him. I think the power of Evloev's wet blanket will be strong. That Russian wet blanket will be very strong this weekend. So yeah, not a whole lot of footage of Murphy's takedown offense and ground game, because he is one of those guys that hasn't fought a whole lot of strong grapplers. Earlier on in the breakdown, though, we did comment on Murphy being a little bit of a low-volume striker at times, and you can kind of see it here. You know, 6 strikes in round 1, 15 in round 2, 20 in round 3, 18 in round 4, 8 in round 5. It's not great. Very low volume, to be fair, for the featherweight division. You know, you'd really want your fighter to be averaging 25 to 30 strikes per round in the featherweight division. So you see Murphy well below average, and it's not like Emmett was using relentless grappling to keep Murphy up against the cage or on his back defending takedowns, where you know, Murphy didn't spend a whole lot of time on the feet where he could have got those 25 to 30 strikes in. Yes, there was a bit of grappling in this fight, but not tons and tons and tons, and a big percentage of this fight did take place on the feet. So Murphy's stats not great in this one, especially because Emmett is like 40 years old. So when earlier on in the breakdown I was saying I could actually see Evloev nicking some rounds with his striking, it's not because, you know, it's not because he's a better striker than Murphy, it's just because Murphy's inactivity could get him into trouble. Having said that, with Murphy having home advantage on his side, it's going to be very difficult for Evloev to win rounds against him. So, yeah, this is one of those fights where Evloev should win. If this fight were taking place on neutral territory in Vegas or somewhere like that, I would be very, very confident Evloev would get the job done here with his wrestling. Yes, Evloev does have a tendency to slow a bit as fights wear on, but his cardio has got a lot better in recent years. Murphy's a cardio machine. But yeah, if this fight were taking place on neutral territory, I'd feel very confident Evloev would just wet blanket Murphy to a decision win. But with Murphy having home advantage, I'm far less confident that happens. It's actually a pretty good fight for live betting, I think. Now, in terms of the fight spreads, I don't like the fight spreads, to be honest. And I do think this fight's very likely to go to a decision. So the odds on that are absolutely shocking. The reason why I think it'll go to a decision is because, as you can see, Evloev is an absolute decisionator. He's gone to a decision in 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. His last 9 fights. And Murphy, you can see he's gone to a decision in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of his last 6. So very likely this one goes to a decision. I hope you found that useful. And yeah, we'll see you next week with another breakdown video. Please like if you haven't already, and leave a comment. Let me know what your bets are for this weekend. Love you all. Take care. Nice one, guys. Bye.